All right, now that we've hopefully you've watched the pre-lesson for section 1.4, pre-calc B, and here comes the packet lesson. So this says, find that. Well, like I said, what's on the inside? G of 2. So we got to figure that out first. Now, this is a whole different problem. So we'll do this one first, and then we'll do that one second. But notice this says let x be 2. Plug it into the equation defined by G. It's right there. So we're going to say, all right. So we go 2 times 2 minus 4, which is going to equal 0. But remember, what we found was this. So we take it out and we replace it with f of 0. Now this tells us let x be 0. Plug it into the equation defined by f, which is right there. So I get 0 squared minus 3, which is negative 3. That final thing is the answer to that craziness. Now let's do problem number 2. And what's on the inside? F of negative 3. So we got to find that first, which means plug negative 3 in there. So negative 3 squared minus 3 would be 9 minus 3, which is 6. And now we got to take that out, replace it with a 6. This means plug it in, plug 6 in for x into the equation defined by G. Fancy way of just saying plug it in right there. 2 times 6 minus 4. 12 minus 4 is 8. There's your final answer for that second part. All right, this gets a little trickier because instead of putting numbers in, we're going to put stuff in. So that's going to mess with you just a little bit. Also, this little statement at the end says state the domain. And this will always be of the inside. It's just a rule, and if we don't say it, it'll be super confusing, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. So, this says find f of g of x. Now, where's the number? Well, there isn't a number. You know, this said g of 2. This just says put g of x in here, which means we're going to find g of x, which equals 2x plus 2, and we're going to replace it with this. We replace g of x with what it equals. Now wait, it says state the domain of whatever we put on the inside. So it's really saying, what's the domain of 2x plus 2? Well, remember, we have two rules. We cannot have zeros in the denominator, and that can't happen in this situation, so we don't have to worry about that. And we can't have square roots of negatives. We don't even have square roots. So what's the domain of this? Well, guess what? It's all real numbers, but that's what we would say in Algebra 2. How do we say it in pre-calc land? Negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. So there's the domain for this problem. It's the domain of whatever's on the inside. But we're not done with this. We still need to take all this stuff and substitute it in for x into the equation defined by f. Well, here it is. It's x minus 1. So we take all this stuff and we replace the x with it. So we go 2x plus 2, that's my x, minus 1. Add like terms, we get 2x plus 1. There's my answer. Strange, I know. It's just an exercise to kind of get you guys used to this terminology, okay? Now what's on the inside here? F of x. Okay, we'll find the domain of that. Let's do that first. F of x is x minus 1. Go through our checklist. Is there a chance we get a 0 in the denominator? No. Is there a possibility we get a square root of a negative? No. Guess what our domain is? Negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. There's our domain. Now let's do the math. So the first thing we do is we replace f of x with what it equals, and that's x minus 1. Second thing we do, we find the equation defined by G, which is 2x plus 2, and then we put whatever's on the inside into wherever x pops up. So that's 2 times x minus 1 plus 2. So we get 2x minus 2 plus 2. These cancel, and our answer is 2x. All right. All right, let's keep going. The domain's going to get a little bit more interesting for these. So what's on the inside? G of x. All right, so this turns into f of square root of x. I just replaced the square root of x for g of x because that's what it equals, kind of like substitution. Now wait a minute. We've got to find the domain of the square root of x. See, now we got a problem. This stuff can't be negative. So the domain would be x is greater than or equal to 0. And there's my domain for this problem. But now I got to continue with the math. I got to put the square root of x, wherever x is, into the equation defined by f, which is right there, x squared minus 1. So I got to put the square root of x in there, square it, subtract 1. Well, square root, squared, they just absorb each other. So I get x minus 1. There's my answer. There's my domain for this. All right, what changes on this one? Well, what's on the inside? F of x. So this turns into g of x squared minus 1. And now I'm going to just take the domain of whatever's on the inside, and I say, hey, are there any square roots? No. Are there any x's in the denominator? No, there's only a 1 down there. There's no possible way anything weird can happen. So my domain is all real numbers, and that's how you say it in this class. Well, I still need to put x squared minus 1 into x, wherever it shows up in the equation defined by g. So I get the square root of x, which is where I put the x squared minus 1. And I'm done. Okay? So there's my answer for that one. Let's go to the back side. So this is a whole different lesson. This is decomposing functions. If I was to name it, I would say creating your own. Now, this specifically tells us make this. So your own f of g of x. So really, this fancy title is just basically math saying, hey, be your own math book writer and make a problem like this that will work. I know that's a little confusing, but let me help you out, okay? Notice g of x is on the inside. So we're going to take that clue, and that's going to be our first step. Let the stuff on the inside equal g of x. In other words, I'm going to go g of x equals, notice this stuff is all on the inside of absolute values. So we're going to say, okay, I'll take your word for it, Mr. Cleefish. I don't really see what's going on, but you will. So if g of x equals the stuff on the outside, f of x is basically going to be whatever's left, which would be the absolute value of x. And see, we just found f of x and g of x so that the function can be described as blah, 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 blah. Well, wait a minute. Prove it to me. Okay, what if this was a math problem? And I said, here it is. Now find f of g of x. What would you do? You would take whatever's on the inside, you'd replace it with whatever it equals. So I'd get f of x minus 3 squared. Actually, that'd be like 2 parentheses. Sorry about that. So squared, kind of like that. Now we would put this into x wherever it showed up into the equation defined by f. So we would get the absolute value of x minus 3 squared. In other words, we got the original problem back by these assignments, essentially. All right, let's try that same technique on this last problem. Follow. Let your stuff on the inside equal g of x. Well, in this case, this is on the inside. So my first step is to say, all right, g of x, and this one's going to be x cubed plus 1. So if we take this out from here and replace it with x, that's telling us what f of x is going to be. Again, take the stuff out, replace it with x, and we're done. It's that easy. And if you don't trust yourself, take a minute and think to yourself, all right, let's actually work this out. Let's put this in the inside, so I'd go f of x cubed plus 1. Now I need to put this, wherever x is, into the equation defined by f, which is right there. So I get the square root of x cubed plus 1, and I get my original equation back. So I must have assigned these values correctly. That's it.